So hi everyone, my name is Roya. Welcome back to the QUnited blog. I'm here with Kelly today from Stolen by Smith. Rather than me giving an introduction to Kelly, I will let her introduce herself to everyone. So Kelly, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm heading into my fourth year in a commerce program. Within Queen's University, you can find me in equity organizing spheres such as Lamana Gender Advocacy Center and working for the Queen's Equity and Human Rights Office.
Awesome. From that, Kelly, do you want to tell us a little bit about Stolen by Smith and what motivated you to start it and how the project is evolving over the summer?
Yeah, so Stolen by Smith is actually a project that's inspired by Black student activists across America, namely the people who run Black at Harvard Law, Black at Cornell, and then the Twitter movement, #Black in the Ivory. These are Black students who are highlighting how white supremacy is again insulated in academic industrial complexes and how Black students and other racialized queer trans students are experiencing disproportionate experience of violence in schools. So my work is completely, as always, inspired by Black Indigenous activists in this area. And I started Stolen by Smith because of my frustrations with the lack of, just action taken by Smith administration in my 4 years here. Because I'm graduating, hopefully, in 2021, I was really hoping that I could make a change before I graduated, which is why I finally got involved in the Commerce Equity Organizing Sphere. So on Comstock, I'm the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer, my co-EDIO, Mina Wasim. But what we found out was that even in this role, there was still no transparency with the Commerce Office. We never had communication or administrations the way we needed. And we were repeatedly censored in what we could do in our positions as EDIOs. So a lot of the things that we could engage in were very performative. So for example, I love having pride posts. I love highlighting our queer graduates from this program, LGBTQ graduates from this program. But that's the extent of the work that we were allowed to do. We were never allowed to make systemic changes. We were never allowed to make large-scale initiatives that would impact the well-being of marginalized students across the program. And that's what we really struggled with. So I started Stolen by Smith following a reflection of how poorly my previous consultations of administration went. So in second year, following writing an article in the Queen's Journal, replying to Bobby Liang's article. Bobby, love and respect everything he does. But I wrote a response to Lori Garnier's response to Bobby's article, and I found that her response was absolutely inadequate. So she invited me in for a meeting with her. So this was back in April 2018 or 2019. And throughout the rest, she promised me one, that she would connect me with resources to do more equity work. Two, that she would really emphasize that was yeah, we both know institutional change is slow. That's very understandable. And three, she offered me to meet up again in the future. Mm-hmm. But as I followed up with her in August later that year and throughout other times during the year, calling her, trying to go to her office, emailing her and her assistant, I never got a response. And so that was extremely discouraging, that it seemed all she had met with me for was just to placate my concerns temporarily without actually making any change. And so yeah, in my fourth year before I left, I really wanted to see some actionable systemic change happen. I wanted to place pressure on Smith for all the ways it has historically and ongoingly failed its students of color, students who experience sexual violence, students with disabilities, just marginalized students overall.
Awesome, yeah, and change you are making for sure. The ripple that you guys have created throughout the community goes beyond even Ontario and actually transforms across the country. We're seeing similar pages show up in universities as far as the University of British Columbia. So the impact is not even localized to our Queens community. Even from that, you chatted a little bit about the need for systemic change. And I know after being active in reading Stolen by Smith posts and engaging in conversations with my peers, that you've started a group called Smith Reform, which is working on a series of projects to address these kind of systemic changes in our community. So can you tell us maybe a little bit more about the work that the Smith Reform Project will be engaging in and how it will impact the Queens community?
Yeah, so Reform Smith is just honestly just a group of student equity organizers who decided to come together to make change in the school. These were alumni, students who are currently in the school who are passionate about making change. The group itself is pretty horizontally organized. There's co-chairs or whatever, which is me, Nora, Mina, and we have external advisors who are alumni, which are Dilton and John Sibbald. But for the most part, all decision making is horizontally done. All the co-chairs do is serve as a touch point for everyone else. The work we're doing right now is we're compiling a document with a list of 8 initiatives that we're putting forward. You can find a more detailed list of those 8 initiatives on the Stolen by Smith Instagram. But as of right now, we're trying to make very encompassing changes to address everything that we found in terms of qualitative data available on Stolen by Smith. So that includes one of the big things that we're thinking about right now, following the release of the sexual violence policy updates in Queen's University, is remodeling that to see how we can better protect students and how we can better change the power dynamics that are currently existing in the Smith School of Business, especially with like executive clubs like Quick, like Creo, like Weiling Zou, how to better change that social power dynamic that currently exists to better insulate the safety of just students who have experienced sexual violence in the school overall. A lot of the work that we're also doing at this time is brainstorming how we can collaborate with other equity groups around commerce or just Smith overall. Like I'm thinking specifically of how the Smith Transparency Project is an extremely incredible project that's going on. It's completely data backed, which is a little bit different from what we're doing. They have quantitative data, whereas we look at more qualitative data.
Yep.
And I've been trying to just consolidate everyone who is doing equity work in Smith School of Business however I can, and using the Stolen by Smith platform to just represent them as well. Like at the end of the day, like we're not the sole equity organizing group in like Smith, and we never will be. Like there will always be so many different multifaceted approaches to equity organizing, and I think like honestly, a multifaceted approach is the only way that we can have a successful rebellion, I say in quotations, against the Smith administration. So a lot of the work that we do right now is like one, brainstorming on our own how we can improve the Stolen by Smith platform, opening that brainstorm up to feedback from students moving forwards, and then also using the platform to like highlight any other groups who are doing equity work.
Awesome. We're excited. I'm excited to see how that evolves over the course
Yeah.
for the next year. Building off that, obviously a lot of what we're talking about is student-run equity organizing. But obviously, as we've discussed, we need and want to see action from the university as soon as possible. But what should students do that aren't super involved in equity work? What should they do when they consistently see that their institution is engaging in performative activism and isn't acting on the voices of QT BIPOC students in their community?
I think like a really important thing that before engaging in activism is, well, not even before engaging in activism is a lifelong process, always engaging in it. But I think a really important thing for Smith students right now is for education. I see like a lot of, so as a commerce student myself, who was like quite participative in the program my first year and second year, I had to unlearn a lot of things that were taught to me that were acceptable by the Smith School of Business, that were taught to me by like white supremacy, by racism. I don't unlearn a lot of those things before I could engage in equity work in a way that was not self-serving, not selfish, that didn't need any self-recognition, that didn't need titles. And I think like that process is really important in engaging activism, first of all. Just recognizing the work you do is never for yourself, it's always for the well-being of everyone around you in the community. So I really encourage everyone at this time to take time to educate themselves by reading books centering like Black and Indigenous authors. Black and Indigenous activism are always at the root of everything I do. And Black Indigenous activists always actually like teach me and guide me in the ways I want to participate in activism. So I think that's like a good first step. That's like one, educate yourself as an ally, know how you can best support the communities who are being affected. And two, like taking the fact that like a lot of these folks who are not currently educated or who haven't experienced like discrimination in the Smith School of Business are predominantly like white folks, cis folks, folks who are heterosexual, folks from upper middle income backgrounds. And that's not to say like everyone who experiences discrimination is not of that identity, but predominantly it is of these folks. So I think like because they have such privilege in their social mobility, they have such privilege in their identities, it's really good to mobilize that privilege in like one, writing to the Smith School of Business, using your own platform to hold school accountable. Like one of the reasons why the Stolen by Smith platform is so successful is because social media has become mobilized. Like following the Black Lives Matter movement, we saw a kind of radicalization of how social media has been used for political means, and that's part of the reason why Stolen by Smith has gain the traction it has, because of the work that's set up by our Black activists before us. And I think like again, learning how to use your social platforms as a form of activism is really important in this day and age when so much activity happens online. Like Twitter, I think is like honestly one of the best educational platforms for me out there. Right? You get to see like
Love it.
Community organizers like give you active knowledge on like how you can improve your organizing, how to improve yourself as a person, why your activism is flawed. And like because activism is an ongoing learning process, like surrounding yourself with people who are constantly educating you and challenging your views, not necessarily doing just like, oh, racism is good. No, racism is always bad. But people who are challenging your perception of like, for myself, like something I really had to unlearn was the model minority myth. Something I really had to unlearn was anti-Blackness.
Yep.
I think like unlearning a lot of that taught me why I was so conformative to the standards of white supremacy and capitalism, etc. For me as like a learner, as someone who engages in activism work. And yeah, sorry, I think I'm getting a bit off track, but
no,
like,
this is
education. Yeah, education is at the baseline of everything. Again, supporting Black Indigenous activists, always in the work they do, following in the footsteps of following if you're an ally, following the footsteps of PT BIPOC and activism work that they're doing. And always like staying humble. I think staying humble is a really important part of recognizing that like no recognition never has a place in equity work. I was like speaking to Slow My Smith platform specifically. I was deeply uncomfortable, and I still am deeply uncomfortable because I don't love attention in certain ways, and this is one of the ways I don't love attention. But like putting my name on this Slow My Smith platform was like it was only there as a safety precaution for other QT BIPOC in the program, because I remember back in 2018 when Bobby's article came out. Bobby was like blacklisted. He was treated really poorly for the valid concerns that he brought up, and a lot of people critique the manner, the medium in which he chose to bring up these issues, but in doing so, completely disregarded the extremely valid claims that he had. So that's another way of how white supremacy like polices equity work. So it's like how we police. It's one, tone policing, how we're allowed to say our experiences. White supremacy allows only a certain kind of equity work to exist. So ones that are digestible, ones that are permissive to the white audience. And I think like putting my name on this platform was a way of preventing other QT BIPOC from being accused of doing that and being blacklisted in ways that I have been. Because like I'm sure as anyone who's following my platform knows, I've gotten so much hate for doing the work I do, and so much criticism for doing the work I do. And I think like putting my name on that was like a deeply frustrating experience, because I feel like a lot of people are like, this is something I wanted to speak to for a while now, but I haven't because I don't know what platform to do it on. I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time right
Oh
now.
my gosh, this is amazing, and I think people are going to be so tuned in for this whole discussion.
Oh yeah, okay, hopefully.
Continue to talk.
Something I've been like having a lot of hard times with is like people like saying like, oh my god, you're so incredible to be doing what you're doing. I was made like some person of the week, which I'm like grateful for. I'm grateful for all this recognition. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, it's not like I've cried literally every single night for the first week I ran Alumni Smith. I've had so many panic attacks, bad like lots of depressive episodes, borderline personality disorder episodes. As a result, like I'm not any braver or stronger than anyone else out there. I just do it out of desperation, which is what motivates a lot of the equity work I do right now, knowing that I leave the school soon, knowing that I don't have a lot of mobility in the things I do. Like, to put me on a pedestal to discredit the work done by other activists who are far more incredible than me, but on a less performative level. Like, let's be frank, Alumni Smith is performative. It's a platform that literally collects trauma porn of other students' experiences, which is, it's so devastating that that's what we have to get to, that students congregate to share the trauma in order to be listened to by the university. But like, that's what academic institutions need. Like, it's terrible, but like even now when I meet with administration, they're always saying we need more input. Like you were talking earlier about like how admin still wants more input from students from Alumni Smith. Like, what else do you need? Like, the only reason why Alumni Smith is accessible as it is because of anonymity. We know that administration tokenizes the words of like students again and again without following up with any action. So for them to be like, we need more input always, is just, again, using the labor of QT BIPOC without following up with any actual change.
Yeah. Well, it's seriously getting to the point where it's like, how much more listening do you need to do?
Yeah.
I cannot understand that. Kelly and I had a discussion about this earlier. If you are listening to this, please stop listening and act. Continue to listen to the voices of BIPOC, but I think it has gotten to a point a long time ago.
Yeah. Like, it's clear that listening does nothing. Like, the amount of emails have gone from alumni, and this is what's been really eye-opening for me for how Lori Garnier has been incompetent. Like, not to say that she's a bad executive director, but she has no means equipped to do it. I think, like, that's a fair expectation. Equity work is a deeply complex field in itself. Yeah. You need education to it. Maybe when she entered the role, that wasn't a need of the executive director, but it is a need now. Like, equity work so clearly has to be done. And so many alumni have told me how they have the like literal exact same experience as me, where they reach out to Lori. Lori was super kind to them, super receptive during the meeting, and then never followed up again. And this is a story that's like repeated even now. Like, I had a student reach out to me maybe a week ago over Facebook call and told me like Lori had done the exact same thing to her literally this month. Telling her how like, oh, I would love to help, let me know how I can support you. And after the meeting, radio silence, no follow-up, no listening, nothing. And it's just like, I don't know, that just shows to me like how much they completely disregard the actual validity of the well-being of students, how much they disregard like they can hear from us again and again and again, and they're still not going to make change. Like, that's why I think Slow My Smith platform is necessary, because it holds them accountable to their inaction. Like, even the standards, like even your action plan that they put forward, it's like not to pat myself on my own back, but like so many of the things that were raised in those town halls that they're proposing forwards are literally directly quoted from things that the activist work that I've done and the activist that I've proposed, and the activist work that they shot down in the past, but are only taking seriously now because I have a platform that's holding them accountable. And it's so frustrating for me that like, I don't do this work for money, but this work affects my well-being, and this work has affected my ability to do a company, particularly in my full-time job. And as a broke ass student, I have very little money to begin with. Like, I'm dependent on my job to be able to feed myself, to be able to live in my position. And for me to not get paid while doing this work and spending like, me and Nina probably spent 80 hours a week on this work, and that's not an exaggeration. We're in calls, we're in like 2 to 3 calls a day. Each call is like at least an hour. And on top of that, like the amount of equity organizing work we have to do to just brainstorm and to think and to meet with people again and again and again. It's just exhausting. Like, I remember when Still My Smith platforms first opened, me and Mina would be the last people we call before we slept, and it would be like 11:30 p.m. calls for an hour, and then we wake up the next morning 8 a.m. and be like, okay, are you up? Yep, I'm up. Okay, let me go shower, and then we're gonna be on a call again. And that's what organizing was like in those first few days. And it's slowed down a bit now because we're doing like bureaucratic work now. We're like writing policies you want to see. We're writing like documents, but still like the pressures that for us at least is definitely still there.
Yeah, no, that kind of ties into my next question. So Mina's also a close friend of mine, and so I've had a lot of discussions with her over the last several weeks, and I know that her sleep has been reduced and her intake has been reduced discussions for most of June. So I'm just curious, and this is something that's been, I know, top of mind for me and top of mind in a lot of the discussions I've had with friends, is what can students do to make sure that the labor that people like yourselves and Mina and all the other equity organizers are doing is properly recognized and addressed? And I know you said, obviously, it's not about recognition and it's not about yourself, obviously, but for us and for students, like, that's a serious concern. I think about it all the time. I think about Mina all the time after she's told me things that have happened to her. And so, like, what can we do to support organizers in our community, knowing that is unpaid, and they're being asked more and more by administration and other groups to help them. Questions that get answered can be found on Google. I don't know. That's something that's been top of mind for me. I'm curious to get.
No, that's very fair. I think like if you really want to like appreciate the work that's being done by equity organizers, you want to internalize it into your own lives and into the things you're like the things that you're part of. So something that I see right now is like, we know we cannot trust administration to make change, and that's something that's just been proven through this entire process. The critique has like clearly not been heard by administration at this time. So what I find like immense pride and joy in, I don't know if I can even say pride, because like I don't think I'm mobilizing with these folks, but like the amount of student organizers who are like, I met like board meeting, and I frankly I didn't expect to have a good meeting of board meeting, because board meeting historically is like a club that is centered on like drinking activities, but meeting of all these student clubs who are literally like nothing to do with equity, I say with quotations, in their like club operations, now incorporating actual equity mandates and actual plans to like address equity issues in their own club. That's what I want to see. Like, I want to see community organizing so we can take care of ourselves even when administration can't. So look into how you can improve equity in your club. If you might think that you don't need equity in your club because it's a finance club, trust me, you're wrong. Equity needs to exist literally in every single sphere, no matter what it is. Like, whether it's a finance sphere, real estate sphere, accounting sphere, equity can always be improved upon. Sorry, you sneeze.
No, go ahead.
Or not. I think like another thing that if you really find like folks in your community are deserving of recognition, nominating them for scholarships. Something that happens more frequently in like community organizing spheres, just like literally just keep transferring them money. Like, you'll see with like, I'm thinking of like the Tidenega and what's efforts to address the coastal gas and pipeline efforts. A lot of those were just like us literally just sending money to people's e-transfers so that they had money to organize on the front line, so then food and water when their water front lines were unable to leave. Like, in the past few days, I've had a few people reach out to me asking like where they can put money towards. And I will direct them to the organizing clubs in Almont, or direct them to Kingston organizations like Roots and Wings is one, for example. Really good organization to donate to if you want to give me money. I'm also thinking of like Mutual Aid Cataraqui is a really good place to give money to if you want to give anyone money. Like, honor the work that's being done by your student organizers by putting money into initiatives that they care about, or giving them money directly, because clearly the school isn't doing that. But on a more bureaucratic level, if you don't have money to give, a really good way to support them is also like nominate them for awards, nominate them for scholarships, nominate them for these institutional recognitions, so that at least when they leave this institution, they have money to pay off their debts, and they have recognition that can take forward to like careers, for example. So whereas like recognition obviously isn't a reason, like me and Mina don't deserve for recognition. Like,
exactly,
we talk so much about how like we would rather remove our names from this, because like this brings us so much hate. Like, I remember both me and Mina at one point, like, we were talking at one point in my life at the start of Still My Smith, I was eating instant noodles like once a day, because I was just also my personality and my disorders and my like disabilities. I'm bad at eating to begin with. I'm bad at taking care of myself to begin with. But with like the amount of administrative stress, the amount of like anxiety that I got from running this club, from this platform, and the amount of hate I got from running this platform, I remember like I was barely eating. My housemate was under quarantine that time. He just came back from Switzerland. So I was responsible for his food. I remember for dinner, I fed this poor man, like my housemate, a block of cheese because I hadn't eaten that day and I had no food in the fridge. And I was like, oh my God, Sam, I'm so sorry, but all we have
Yeah.
is a block of cheese over there. Yeah, like we never do this with recognition, but like at the end of the day, it's exhausting work. It directly impacts like our mental well-being. Like I haven't had this many random panic attacks since like second year when I was still friends with racists.
Yeah.
So it's been depleting. So if you guys ever want to give money towards me or something I care about, always hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, email. I can be accessible if you're trying to give me money. But like obviously, like at the end of the day, like I joke about this a lot, but like money for me at least, money has never been what it's about.
Yeah.
It's always about like the trauma that I've gone through and the trauma that I don't want other people to go through. And the trauma that unfortunately is still happening in this program. Like I think a lot of times we diminish the trauma we experience and we call it, oh, just bad experiences. But having to unlearn what white supremacy and racism taught you is trauma, and it should be recognized as such. Yeah.
No,
I hope that's helpful.
No, that was helpful and like gave me some ideas for things I haven't considered in the past. So that was super helpful. I guess for the last question, and something I really, really wanted to get your thoughts on is as EDIO with Nina, obviously we saw ComSoc come out with a set of commitments and what you guys were going to do to act in the EDI space. I'm curious if you could just briefly chat to those. You don't have to go through each one individually, but kind of the overarching theme of them and why a student organization can turn around action so much quicker than our administration could, and what that process is like.
Let me just pull them up on Instagram.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm not with them. But I just want to give like such props to MK, Will Lamblier, and Sebi, who put together this like statement. This is a 180 turnaround for where I was like a few months ago when I first started doing this position, because like I remember when I was writing it then, like I don't think anyone was trying to censor us, but I was still getting censored in the ways that I could directly address white supremacy. Like I wasn't allowed to use certain terms. They kept saying like I was being too harsh to administration and stuff like that. And like now for them to turn around and write the statement, I am deeply in love with every single one of like Sebi, Will, and MK. Like so much respect, so much props. I first of all just want to give credit where it's due. Sorry, that was really emotional, but I'm very grateful for your support always.
No, we have such an amazing leadership team during this time, so I couldn't.
Absolutely, I'm so happy to hear about it. Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again? My brain just like stopped for a second.
Oh my God, don't worry. It was I know that ComSoc turned around those commitments really quickly. So the first part of my question is, what did that process look like, and why can we see action from a student organization so much quicker at the university? I hope you're hearing that. And then the second part is just briefly to chat to the overall goal and how they're broken down short, long term. Just an overall picture for students who maybe aren't as aware of how they will play out.
I think like this, the reason why student clubs can organize faster and like grassroots organizations are always more efficient in addressing community needs is because we are the ones who experience this stuff and we know where the needs need to be fulfilled, and we aren't like reinforced by how policy dictates that we behave. Like, I'm sure like Lori Garnier is not the bottleneck for like equity issues in commerce. It's a bureaucratic thing. It exists in all institutions where there's layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy and administration to go through in order to make change happen, because that's how like not permissive like policy changes at institutions like this. And because like ComSoc is a student club, we have a lot more autonomy in what we can do and how we can mobilize our funds. So I think like that's why I have a lot of respect for like grassroots organizing, and that's why I think right now grassroots and student organizing is far more important than administrative change, because administration has proven to be like frankly like failures in historically addressing racial inequity issues, like discrimination issues in this program. Clearly sexual violence has been an ongoing issue that hasn't been addressed, and student organizers are so much more efficient at mobilizing that. Like I see like there are students who are organizing different ways that students can receive like mental health support even if they're outside of Ontario. I see students organizing ways they can create space for QT BIPOC students, for students with like specific identities that are underrepresented in commerce. And like we have the ability to, like, for example, ComSoc hiring policies. It's a lot easier for us to make those changes because our policies are self-written. True. Whereas with administration, there's so many levels of bureaucracy to go through. There's so many people who have to approve it. There are so many people you have to check in with. And like, I think the other thing is like a generational difference. In our generation, I think we're all not necessarily more dedicated to social equity, but equity is something that's more present in our minds every single day. And you can see this in like reports released by like McKinsey. This is reflected in market trends that companies with like equitable outcomes and like operations are more successful. So I think that's something that's like more deeply more deeply valued in our community and our age group than perhaps those working in administration right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Also, like I think like diversity is so much more better represented. Not even, it's not well represented, but it's better represented amongst the student body than is amongst alumni. Sorry, not alumni. Administration.
Yeah.
Administration, let's be honest, is still predominantly white folks, straight passing folks, heterosexual folks, people who probably are in upper middle income background right now.
Yeah.
They don't experience discrimination the same way systemic oppression like is placed upon QT BIPOC. And as a result, they don't feel the same urgency I think as students do.
Yeah.
They're like we've seen from the Smith Business School that like they value their reputation more than the actual well-being of students. Like we look at this is just such a small like surface level example, but like if you look at their Instagram even now is so concerned with image preservation instead of actually like responding to the needs and requests of students.
Yeah.
And I think like at the end of the day, the university really respected the things we wanted to do. Really respected the well-being of students. Just immediately implement the initiatives that we're asking for, because these aren't difficult initiatives. Like asking for a culturally aware counselor in commerce is not something that is difficult. There's an abundance of counselors available, and the fact that we've only had like one Black counselor who's like temporarily hired in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, I think is like quite ridiculous. The other thing is like how predominantly white, and I think like even just a little bit Asian our faculty is. It says a lot about what kind of people are being like, what kind of systemic barriers exist in academia to allow for QT BIPOC to be in positions of like power. Like being in an academic position, like a tenured professor position, is difficult. And I wonder if we had statistics on the program, what it would look like, because I'm pretty sure diversity isn't well represented amongst those with power right now. And that's why you don't feel the same urgency towards change.
Yep. No, all really good points.
Like at the end of the day, like the idea that like it's something I really, really struggle with explaining to people about. But the idea that we need to always be like, I believe respect is important. I think respect is important in just maintaining like the well-being of others and holding space to ensure that others' health is prioritized, even though we might have opposing views, is really important. But the idea that I need to be very respectful towards Brenda Brower. Like I'm thinking specifically about meeting Brenda. I wasn't disrespectful by any means. And you know Mina. Mina's like soft-spoken. Mina's diplomatic. Mina's such a good communicator too. Like she's never made me feel like I've been threatened in any setting. And while I can come on stronger, I was silent for most of the meeting. But even then, Brenda Brower kept saying like, our heads are all in the same space. We all want the same things. You just gotta respect the way we do things. And the idea of respect is so just ludicrous to me, because of the giant power discrepancy that exists between my identity as a student and Brenda Brower in her position as like the literal dean of the like Smith School of Business right now. Like there is nothing I could do, and this has been proven historically, that could endanger her well-being, that could endanger her job position. Like we see Lori Gardner has been in this position for 7 years, and equity issues has been a problem for 7 years, and Lori's job has been like basically, have you seen her job threatened? Because I sure as hell haven't.
Yeah.
And the idea I need to be respectful to them, while every single thing they do directly impacts my well-being and the life that I lead at the Smith School of Business. Whereas the activism work that I do barely impacts them, because they have the social mobility of being like well established in your field. They have money already. I have none of those things. So to me, the idea of respectability politics and the way I'm tone policed for things I'm passionate about is so deeply frustrating to me in these academic spaces.
Yeah. That was super. No, you're super right, and it's disappointing to know that was your experience even after everything, but also not so.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess to wrap things up, that was amazing, Kelly. I know students are going to find this super helpful. I want to, and I know, as you've mentioned previously, it's not about you, but to thank you for the incredible work you're doing. And I know you literally said not to say that, but maybe the words aren't the right way to show my support, but I hope you feel the support. Pardon?
It's definitely a personal thing, because I just don't like it's definitely a personal thing, but like your words are so kind, you're always appreciated. I'm just so awkward when I'm given like compliments or like thank yous, because this story I've always been doing, and for the first time it's being seen on, I guess, on like a larger level.
Yeah.
And this is like, the support is brand new to me, because I don't know, historically when I do this work in commerce, I got called like a social justice warrior, or I got called like just really sensitive and stuff. So like this is the first time my work I'm doing is being validated by larger crowds. And I'm like, oh, like so you guys all want things that I've always wanted? Wow. And what did you used to call me? A social justice warrior? Like so for me, like getting these compliments is still new and uncomfortable. But as always, your words are fully appreciated and very kind. I'm grateful for that.